joining the second webinar of today's symposium on the futures of food tourism and gastronomy. The purpose of the symposium is to delve into our new book 2075, The Futures of Food Tourism. My name is Sean Kim. I'm based at Edith University in Western Australia. I'm one of the co-editors of 2075, The Futures of Food Tourism, and the chairing the session you are in. So as a housekeeping messages, in the webinar will take half an hour or so, and then we will begin with a very, very brief introduction of the two speakers lineup. And there will be a short opportunity for Q&A sessions after the presentation. So please drop your questions, if any, in Q&A chat rather than chat box. So for those who are attending the second session only of today's webinar, it is kind of a reminder. So why this particular book? Ian and Una, as co-editors of this particular book, their previous book, The Future of Tourism, in 10 years back, according to Ian, it was a failure. Why? It was a singular view of the future, didn't count for multiple viewpoints of the future, such as the impact of climate change or crisis. Ian describes this as rail track thinking. The new book, set in 2075, takes a scenario planning or multiple viewpoints about the futures of food tourism. 2075 allows for new thinking and disruption. From this beginning, Ian established a wonderful team. Today, Ian and Una will present the foundation of this particular book, that is 4 scenarios. So let's meet today's presenter, Dr. Ian Newman, who is a professor of disruption, innovation, and new phenomenon at the Hotel Management School, Leeuwarden in Netherlands. And Una McMahon Beatty is a professor of hospitality management at Ulster University in Northern Ireland. So let's bring our speakers. And Una.
Thank you very much, Sean. As you said, the previous book took a very singular linear view of the future and didn't account for multiple viewpoints or perspectives of the future, and really had that idea that the past is a good indicator of the present and future, and that's not necessarily the case. So our new book, with a 2075 timeframe, takes the idea that there isn't just one future, but many futures, and that the focus on 2075 really allows for new thinking and disruption. So food tourism is fundamentally about the food of a place. And that means that it's dependent on climate change or the impact of climate change. So we're constantly hearing about how temperatures are being broken on the news every so often. And climate change and extreme weather can be seen as a disruptor because it shapes agricultural and food production, i.e. the ecosystem. So this then changes a place or a destination, and hence food tourism will be impacted as we move forward. Next slide, please. So the book is very much based on a scenario planning methodology or research methodology, which is used to capture multiple food tourism perspectives about the future. So it involves identifying trends, key uncertainties, developing a range of scenarios based on those uncertainties and trends, and then planning how to respond to each scenario. So trends are important, the signals within the environment are important, and all these help us to become more flexible and more adaptable as we face the uncertainties of the future. And if you want to know more about the strategic planning methodology, please see Ian's new book with Albert and Stefan, Scenario Planning and Tourism Futures. Next slide, please, and then over to Ian.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're somewhere else in the Southern Hemisphere. As Una said, this book was fundamentally about multiple futures, different dimensions of food tourism, because basically, if you look at the rules of future studies and scenario planning, no one can predict an exact future, but we can talk about a range of different futures. So that's what the philosophy of the book was all about and how we shaped it. We created 4 scenarios using the standard 2x2 scenario planning matrix that's in all of the literature. And right at the heart of that scenario planning matrix is trying to ask the question, what are the core drivers or trends that you build the scenarios with? And this is like building a house. What is the foundation of your house? So what is the foundation of these scenarios? And these were the drivers of change we identified, we thought were most significant and uncertain. And and they all relate to food tourism. So the first question was about accessibility. How do you, as a tourist, access food tourism? How do you engage with food tourism? And the other driver of change was identity. So how do you, as a tourist, behave, consume that food? So how do you engage with it in the terms of access, and how do you behave with it in the terms of identity? What does it mean to you? Each of these 2 drivers of change had what we call bipolars or opposites. So next slide, please. So if we look at fluid identity, the 2 opposites were hedonism, in the terms of very much about fun, and a focus on consumption and me first, or bohemianism, where there's more a focus on looking at tourism from more of a cultural perspective in the terms of engagement. Whereas access to food tourism is food tourism about community? In the terms of doing things, food festivals, it's communities and locals creating something? Or is food tourism about exclusivity, high value, just for some? So one's about for more and one's just for some. So those became the foundation of the 4 scenarios. Next slide, please. So from that, we created 4 scenarios. So if you take the scenario community and bohemianism, what we had here was something about roots. And roots was all about locals, place. Whereas community with hedonism was about a community restaurant. Not a community restaurant, but it was about putting science and technology right at the heart of the scenario in the context of a food festival and hedonistic activity, whereas Royal Mayfair was about exclusivity, high value, and hedonism. Whereas Le Natural Food Trail was looking at positioning a destination in the terms of high value from a sustainability perspective. So here it's about the benefits of climate change and repositioning what you're about, but protecting it in the terms of access. Next slide, please. So that was the fundamental emphasis of the scenarios, and basically we wanted to tell the story 4 different ways. So 4 different ways in order to emphasize and create different stories that had different languages, a different attitude, or a different position. And when you're doing scenarios, it's about a range of from the possible to the impossible. And here we used Anne Bergman's work on ontologies in future studies. So a prediction scenario is very much, you can believe it, you can see it, it's based on facts. It's very much where food tourism is today and extending out that. Whereas a utopia scenario is something that you really, really, really want. It's a scenario of visioning what you're trying to drive, and and food tourism destinations are it's about creating something. Whereas a Royal Mayfair scenario was based on, it's something you could, it's not a prediction, but it's something it would probably happen. It has a degree of rationality. It's not your first choice, but you could think, yeah, this could really, really happen. Whereas Dr. Spock's restaurant was about what if questions, taking technology and sciences to the limits and thinking the impossible in the terms of a story, very creative, very irrational, improbable, but it could happen because science fiction is just a fictional story about science, but taking it far to give us a degree of creativity in the terms of doing things. So 4 different scenarios with 4 different perspectives. Next slide, please. So basically, the next level down was each scenario had to have a purpose in the terms of an ornithology or a paradigm or a philosophy. And one of the ways to do this is to make a statement or ask a question about what is the position of that scenario. So in Dr. Spock's restaurant, the philosophy that we created was, imagine a world where more food is grown in the laboratory rather than in the field. So here the emphasis in the scenario is science and technology. And from basically what we're saying is, climate change has been dramatic. It's had a huge impact on food production. So food has moved to the factory. Food's being created in the restaurant. It's being created in a laboratory environment. So you'll follow that philosophy all the way through. Next slide, please. Whereas Roots followed the philosophy of about identity. And in a world where climate change is having a significant impact, a lot of the food is the same. It's the corporations that control the food chain supply, and they're producing very bland food in this environment for issues of productivity and cost. So from a food tourism perspective, it's all about how do you create a heterogeneous identity in a homogeneous world. So it's about difference, trying to position food tourism that's different from what we normally eat. So it's about this degree of difference. How do you drive this? Next slide, please. Was Royal Mayfair was asking the question, how do you drive high value and exclusivity? Because for stakeholders to be involved in food tourism and gastronomy, from a private sector perspective, it's all about profit. What is the opportunity? What is the profit in the business case for food tourism? How can you shape food tourism to drive high value and exclusivity? And think about Michelin-starred restaurants and what Michelin-star restaurants have done to create high value and exclusivity. And again, within all scenarios, each scenario has a positive side, but also scenarios have a negative side or a downside. So again, within this scenario, it raises questions about access. This is a scenario about the haves in society rather than the have-nots. The 4th scenario. And the 4th scenario is all about how do you create a food tourism paradise in a vision. This is, what I call the Spice Girls philosophy. What do you really, 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 really want in the terms of doing things? So it's to drive and create a vision, to create a mission and an aim. Next slide, please. The next layers was what's the story? How do you create a story for each scenario? You've got the basis of your foundation, but within each scenario, we folded back into the scenarios a series of trends, drivers of change that helped us create the storyline for each scenario. So in Dr. Spock's restaurant, the emphasis was on increased role of science and production of food, and also the experience economy, about novelty, the experience economy. Think of Heston Blumenthal. Think of the experience that creates. Next slide, please. This scenario about Roots was all about identity and heterogeneous identity. So here the emphasis was on localism. It's all about that consumer seeking authentic experiences. It's all about the role of communities in food festivals, in collaboration between parties, between stakeholders, all the way from the farmer to the retail. So a lot here about destinations and how do you create that food tourism cluster, that food tourism destination from communities, from the bottom upwards. Next slide, please. Whereas Royal Mayfair looked at different trends and different trends to create the story. It was about exclusive dining. It was all about looking at luxury and also looking at the politics of high value, because politicians talk about creating jobs, high value tourists. So this is a scenario that's created with those trends and drivers. Next slide, please. And again, and then we looked at Le Naturel Food Trail. What is this all about? When we were doing this book, it was through COVID-19. So the emphasis here is on regenerative tourism and rural communities. What do communities really, really want? Regeneration, sustainability. It's looking at exclusivity through scarcity of resources and creating something that's very special in health and well-being. So each scenario emphasizes something different. Rather than have 4 scenarios that were of sameness, we tried to make sure that they were different. So you had a different emphasis and you can talk about food tourism different ways. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Ian. You're handing over to me now. So thank you for that. So the next stage really then was to create a series of stories about the future. So our contributors created those stories, and these stories are brought to life the trends, the events, the issues portrayed in the matrix that Ian just explained to you there. And in this slide, we're very much illustrating Dr. Spock's restaurant, where farmers become scientists, and food is grown in the labs, as Ian said, because it can be produced faster, it's healthier, and it's actually nearer to the consumer. Next slide, please. And in order to do that, really, and in order to bring a degree of reality to the scenarios, the book is really dedicated to a series of design challenges. And the researchers or contributors immerse themselves into the scenarios that Ian presented to create a whole set of food tourism experiences. So it helps bring the ideas and the trends, etc., to life through stories and narratives. Next slide, please. So really, to conclude, each scenario, whether it's Royal Mayfair, Dr. Spock's restaurant, La Natura, Food Trail, or Roots, present different pathways to the future. And it's different pathways because they've adapted to the trends, events, and issues differently in each scenario portrayal. So, for example, in Dr. Spock's restaurants, there's a focus on the role of science, technology, and innovation in creating a pathway to the future. Whereas in La Natura, Food Trail, that's really about creating a vision through regenerative tourism. So that brings us to the end of the formal presentation, and over to you, Sean.
Okay, thank you so much, Ian and Una. Your brief introduction to 4 scenarios, that is the framework of our new book. So before the floor is open to audience's questions, me as a moderator, I would like to ask a couple of questions, both Una and Ian. So the first question to Una: how do students learn by using a scenario planning approach when examining the futures of food tourism?
Really good question, Sean. Really, scenarios encourage students to develop their strategic thinking and adaptability by exploring the potential future scenarios and their implications for food tourism. So it really helps them to understand the impact of external forces, such as climate change, to identify changes, to identify decision factors. So how can we influence our future, and to evaluate different courses of action that we might take. So scenario-based learning is really a pedagogic technique for teaching through storytelling. So it's not just one future, it's multiple futures, and we can have a say in how that future moves forward. So really, using scenarios in food tourism equips students with the skills and the knowledge to navigate, I suppose, uncertain and complex futures.
Perfect. And the next question is to Ian. So Ian, when we talk about future, it could be 2040, 2050, 2060, 2075, 80, whatever. But I don't think you're just gonna pick it up 25 by any accidents, by opportunistic way. So why 2075?
Well, that was purposeful, and basically, to demonstrate real change, we have to take people into the future. So what we try to do with 2075 is to demonstrate climate change is not in this process of transition, to 1.5 degrees, it's 2 degrees. We're taking people, climate change has happened, it's been dramatic. So to demonstrate how the agricultural system or food system would change over 50 years. So that's your positioning. You're taking people into that far future. And also you want to create something that's dramatic and different. You're asking people in the book to respond to difference and creativity, not about now, but in the future. So that's why we talked about that 50-year perspective. And also, when we did the other book, I thought it was quite when we did the other book, the first book, The Future of Food Tourism, on reflection, it was quite boring. And I wanted to do something very different to get people to think different ways. And deep down, I'm a bit of a Trekkie, Star Wars fan, so why not? So that's why we did it.
Thanks very much. Not quite sure from the audiences whether you do have further questions to two co-editors, Una and Ian, regarding the scenarios. Okay. It seems like no questions yet, though. Oh, here we go.
Sorry, they've got to put the questions into the chat. If you want to ask a question, put it into the chat and we can respond to it.
Yeah, can you please do Ahmad Reza, please? Okay.
So I'm going to ask Una a question. Una, if we were to thinking about, we finished the book now. It was a project over 3 or 4 years that it's taken us to do. If we were to launch the second edition in 2076, what do you think? What do you think would be different about the book? And that's also a question to Sean as well. What do you think would be different about the book in the second edition?
Oh, that's really interesting. I suppose moving forward, it would be, I think there might be more of an emphasis on the impact of technology on our futures. I think what we're all talking about at the moment is AI and how AI can, for example, enhance food tourism experiences and all of those things. And we have begun to explore that in a good bit of detail. But I think as we move forward, certainly that is really going to impact on that whole idea of authenticity and how we respond to authentic experiences. So again, teasing out those things like Natura versus Dr. Spock's restaurant. So it'll be just interesting. I think as we move forward, it'll be the volume and the magnitude of change. It's going to come very rapidly, and it's about how we can adapt more quickly and be more resilient in many ways to how we move forward with different food tourism experiences. Sean, what do you think?
Well, I totally agree with you, Una. But me as a more sort of optimistic person in all respects, I'm rather go for more sort of roots and then lateral sort of the scenarios to be in the future, because I think Dr. Spock's in the restaurant is really too extreme and a very aggressive scenario which I don't want it to happen. So. And then look, I mean, after 2075, I mean, none of us will be here anyway. So who knows?
Well, our avatars and everything could be here, or our AI generated, personas
Precisely.
could be here. So we could theoretically do another book in
Precisely.
2076.
We
Ian?
have two questions in the Q&A. So I'll just
Okay.
I think both of the questions can go to Sean or Una. Do you have any advice for hospitality entrepreneurs about the future for their businesses?
Oh.
That's a really interesting question, because as a hospitality entrepreneur, you're looking for, I think, initially some kind of niche experience, which is different from everybody else's. But it is deciding, what is that niche experience. So I think, Sean, you can have a technological food experience, or you might want to frame an experience around a particularly authentic perhaps food product or drink product from your region. So I think entrepreneurs, by very nature of entrepreneurs, will be thinking of things differently. So again, it's about what is that niche product or experience which will attract those who are interested in food tourism.
Well, adding to Una's answer for that question, I think if we're looking at the food and beverage sector, I think the small and micro hospitality business entrepreneurs actually cover more than 85%. So obviously these people do not have much big assets to investment, but rather than perhaps they actually focus on their own stories and then developing the bonding and relationship within the local clienteles, and that gives real sort of a social and cultural power to keep it their businesses in a more sustainable manner. I think that could be the way the hospitality entrepreneurs could develop their business models in the future, I think.
One of the things about food tourism and gastronomy, it's an industry of innovation, and I think reflecting on the book, it's about what are the next ideas, what's going to change the markets, and it's about taking some of the scenarios and say, okay, what does it mean for my business today? Where could I find the opportunity?
Well put.
Okay, I think the final question is, could you explain how gastronomy influences the social life and cultural identity of a local community? If any of you can answer for that. Ian, you're mute.
I think that's a question for Sean.
Is it? Well, I mean, yeah, I guess in our first sessions, even in the second sessions, we touch upon that the fundamental characteristics and also the nature of food tourism or gastronomy tourism is all about our stories that actually rooted in our culture and social life and the cultural identity of those in the local communities belonging to. So, I mean, it is an inseparable. They are always going to come together whenever we talk about gastronomy tourism or food tourism. So I think that already explained the question. Okay, so time-wise, I think we, and then also there is no further questions. So let me actually bring our final slide to you. So let me share the final slide. Okay, just 1 second. Here we go. So thank you so much for joining the second session over today's symposium. And then I just want to kindly remind you that our next webinar 3, the futuristic innovations in gastronomy, food and tourism. That's gonna start in an hour also. So please join us after your short tea breaks or cigarette breaks, whatever, lunch breaks, and so on and so on. And then as a kind reminder, if you wish to purchase your own textbook, so we basically offer 50% off with the code FFT50 on the Channel Views website. So please do consider to purchase your own copy if you wish to do.